absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. So, obviously, just in the same way that even in our greatest efforts to evangelize and disciple people, there are people because of free will, right? There are people who will reject that, who will not adhere to that, who will exercise their free will to actually decline all of the things that we see God grant us, right? Salvation,
Yeah.
eternal life. I mean, like you could talk about all of these things that God has granted us through the sacrifice of Jesus. People still, for some reason, will neglect that and walk away with that. When you get to a spot where policies and the government structure is starting to uphold Christian standards, um, how does somebody in those fields where they've rejected Christianity, maybe they have or had not had a conversation about Jesus, and maybe let's just say that they have had conversations. They're like, absolutely
Right.
don't want this, still want to live my life of sin, still want to live in this, still want to make my own decisions, whatever the case may be. How would you have a conversation with that person to assure them that some of those policies, some of the things would not actively um, uh, hurt or harm them in the way that
Yeah.
they live their life? Because I think that was something that we saw with obviously the candidacy and the presidency of Donald Trump. There were a lot of people who got really, really scared when he first got into office because, oh my gosh, he's going to outlaw this and he's going to kick these people out of the country. And obviously, he did that on some level, but it wasn't to the
Not
scale
at
I think
every
that
level.
I
Not
don't
not
think it
to
was
the
to the scale
extreme
that
that people
people
thought that he
thought it
was
would
gonna
be.
go.
Yeah. And so to those people who go, okay, well, if there's all of these laws, you've talked about abortion laws, you've talked about anti like homosexual laws, you've talked about anti sodomy laws, all of these things. How would that not deter somebody who has maybe had an experience with evangelism, still declined it in their free will, and they go, well, I still want to live here, but all of these policies and all of these things are actively kind of against me. How would you have that kind of conversation?
Yeah, because the issue is not really about the policy, the issue is what we believe about freedom. Um, because the freedom whenever America was established upon a particular philosophy of freedom. And it wasn't freedom to do whatever you so desire, it was freedom to do what you ought to do. Freedom to do the right thing. Because obviously, like the philosophy of freedom being doing whatever you so choose doesn't exist in America, right? And I really don't believe that exists anywhere in the world because am I, I guess practically speaking, I'll use an extreme example. Like, am I free right now to go out and murder somebody? Am I given the capacity to do so? Absolutely. But I will sacrifice my freedom in doing that. What I'm saying? And so whenever, like, I have that conversation with that person, we fundamentally believe different things about freedom, and so fundamentally, we're gonna believe different things about policy. Because ultimately, whenever I believe in freedom and doing what you ought to do, we have to establish what we mean by that, and what ought people to do. What is the right thing? And so whenever you have somebody who, let's take somebody who is maybe just say non-religious in general, even if they have some like relative like spirituality, and they are an adherent to the LGBTQ plus community, and they're like, yeah, whenever you establishing this thing will prevent me from being able to love the person that I want to love and do the thing that I believe that I should do. Well, is that what you really should be doing? Like, where's your standard exist? Because we have to have a standard for what we're qualifying as actual freedom. Because whenever we kind of move in the direction of a Christian society, we're establishing what the Bible teaches about right and wrong, to be kind of our base level of what we believe people are free to do. And so whenever I come to that conversation and we're talking, and they're like, "Man, I think this is going to keep me from being able to live my life and the full expression of myself." Well, then my question is, well, is that really who you're supposed to be? And so I think that does kind of lead into a conversation about evangelism, into a conversation about Christ. But ultimately, if they feel like they are incapable of like being who they really want to be in our nation, again, then it kind of comes down to maybe, and this is going to sound a bit harsh, but obviously murderers are not free to be who they want to be in our nation, right? Because we have a gauge for what is morally good and what is morally not good. The issue is that our allowance for immorality, we've moved the goalposts so far back that homosexuality is just completely normative to us, and we don't I'll be honest with you, even I think in Christendom sometimes we don't culturally recognize how wicked and evil that it is. That there's some like candidly speaking, in regards to the theocratic nation that Israel was in its nomadic period, that was something that you could be put to death for. God considered that a very severe evil, like a sexual abomination. He considered that very big deal. And so, kind of in that sense, obviously, I'm not saying that we should put homosexuals to death. But what I am saying is that if a nation develops in the direction that the majority of people are believing that it should be going, which is the democratic process, we do things based on majority, right? Then much like a lot of like the liberal like celebrities have kind of joked about like, oh, if Donald Trump gets back in, then I'm going to move. Then I think that we should have systems where if they so choose that they could be able to move, or if they want to maintain and be a functional member of society within Christendom, then they should recognize and say, hey, you know what? Then practically speaking, they should do the same process that we did, and that they should have activism for the thing that they believe in, right? Would we still consider it amoral?